Welcome to the Blue Mouse Knits. Today I'm going to teach you how to make these really simple and easy boot cuffs. These are perfect for beginners. If you're looking to learn how to knit magic loop and make a really quick project in the round, this is great for you. I'll teach you how to do a cast on, work in magic loop, join in the round, bind off, all those things. These are perfect for gifts. They knit up really fast. You could make several pairs in a weekend. So if you need any last minute Christmas gifts, this is perfect for you. It takes about 50 yards of worsted weight yarn to knit up one pair of this, and you need a US 7, which is a 4.5 millimeter, and you'll want them in a 32-inch cord length. And you'll also need a yarn needle and a removable stitch marker, although you can use a piece of scrap yarn if you don't have a marker. And that's pretty much it, so let's get started. I'm going to begin with a German twisted cast on. You can use any cast on that you prefer, but I really like this one because it is stretchy and then it goes back to a nice shape. So if you want to follow my method, go ahead and cast on 37 stitches. We'll be decreasing 1 stitch when we join in the round. So this is similar to a long tail cast on. You'll need to estimate how long of a tail to have. So I always like to do about 3 to 4 times the circumference of what I'm making. This can just be an estimate, it does not have to be perfect. This is my working yarn, this is my tail yarn. The working yarn goes to my ball of yarn and the tail just goes to the end. So I hold it with my index finger, I pinch the ends together like this, and I placed my index finger and my thumb in between to separate them. Now we're going to go into the loop around your index finger first. So if I turn, you can kind of see that there's a loop. So I just go around to the back of my index finger and go into that hole. And now we're going to pick up our thumb yarn, which is our tail yarn. So I'm going to go underneath my thumb yarn and back through that hole around my index finger. Then release. Tighten up. Twist so that you can see the hole that my index finger creates. Go from back to front into that hole. Now we're going to pick up the thumb yarn, so go underneath it and bring your needle back through that hole around your index finger and release. And that is a German twisted cast on. And you want to be sure to do this loose enough that you can stretch your stitches so that we get that nice stretchy cast on. I like to kind of just go behind my index finger and scoop up that back strand so I'm in the hole. Move my thumb forward to kind of pick up that yarn and bring it back through. Do that in a fluid motion. Then every few stitches I usually have to readjust my yarn. So now that I have all the stitches that I need, we're going to start working in magic loop. I'm going to slide my stitches down to the bend in my circular needle cord, and I'm going to split them where I have 19 on the back needle and 18 on the front needle. Slide down to the bend, and from the end I'm going to count 19 stitches. Here's my 19, here's my 18. So I'm just going to bend my cord in between them and then pull the cord and slide down. Now be sure to pinch this end close together. You really don't want this end to twist. So if you have any twisting, like you can see mine is twisted here, I'm untwisting it. The front sections are very easy to untwist, but you really want this back to remain untwisted, so I pinch it. And then I'm going to continue sliding them up towards the tip of my needles while pinching the ends. My working yarn is attached to my closer needle, and no yarn is attached to my back needle. We're going to move this last stitch here on my back needle to the front needle. So slide them down towards the tip, hold on to the rest of them, kind of pick up that last stitch and move it without twisting it onto our front needle. So I just slipped it over. And now we're going to take the second stitch from the edge on our front needle, pull it over the one we just slipped and off. So just like a bind off, pull it over and off. And then you can pull on both tails to tighten it up. That is how you join in magic loop. So now you're just going to flip your work. So this is the one with my yarn attached to me. I'm going to flip it. Now the yarn's attached to the back needle. I'm going to bring my working yarn in between the needles, and you can ignore your tail yarn. So these boot cuffs are super simple. You're just going to work in a 2x2 rib until you have about 3.5 inches of length, which for me was around 23 rounds. I like to measure slightly stretched because when you're wearing it, it will stretch out a little bit. So you don't have to pull really tight, but just gently stretch it and measure it to try and get around 3.5 inches. At this stage, it's helpful to grab a removable stitch marker, or you can thread a piece of waste yarn into it, but just place it into the cast on of your closest needle, the one that's not attached to your yarn. To begin working in the round, we're going to pull out the back needle. So pull it to the right until you have a little bit of space on the left side. It will look kind of like a bow. You'll have your back stitches laying on the cord and your front stitches laying on the needle. So I like to kind of pinch my back stitches to the front so that nothing gets really twisted. But then you just start knitting. So knit 2. Purl 2. Repeat until you reach the end of the needle. So we finished one full set of knit 2, purl 2, and I have 2 left on this needle. It won't be a full knit 2, purl 2 repeat on each needle, but just remember that when you're going around, that's how you're working. You can rearrange your stitches if you want there to be an even knit 2, purl 2 across each needle, but I just ended with a purl 2, so I'm going to knit my final 2 on this needle. You can release your left needle. I like to kind of straighten things out, just making sure that nothing is twisted here. I pull on the top cord and slide my stitches back onto that back needle. And now we're going to flip our work. I bring my working yarn in between my needles. You want to try and keep your cast on edges down towards the bottom so that nothing is twisted. Now grab your back needle, the one that your working yarn is attached to, and pull it to the right. It should look like this with your back needles now resting on the cord, and you can go ahead and continue working. So remember, we ended our last needle with a knit 2, so we begin with a purl 2. So bring your yarn around to the front and purl 2. And when you go into the second stitch, you want to pull a little bit tighter on the working yarn when you work it to prevent any kind of gap in between your 2 edges. So now I continue in my knit 2, purl 2 until I reach the end. It's going to feel a little bit strange at the beginning if you've never worked magic loop. Finish with my final purl 2. I like to slide away from the edge a little bit, drop my back needle, and I pull on the back cord. Hold on to my stitches and kind of slide them both onto the needle. You know you've finished when your needle points are on the end over here. Go ahead and turn your work. You know you're about to start knitting across the needle when the points are on the right. Bring your working yarn in between your needles to the middle, and that was how you work one row. If you'd like to quickly readjust your stitches so that you have a knit 2, purl 2 repeat on each needle, what you can do is slide your stitches down to the bend. Just hold on to them and slide them down. I'm just going to move 2 from the front to the back. So I take 2 stitches here, slide down to the end, and slip 2 stitches around the bend to the other side. Pull on your cord, and then slide them back onto your needle. Nothing should have been twisted. Now when you knit across, you can work a knit 2, purl 2 full repeat on each needle instead of ending with a knit 2 and starting with a purl 2. It will have no negative effect on the rest of the project. So again, with the yarn in the middle, you pull out the back needle as always, then begin knit 2. So knit 1, and always when you go into the second stitch of a needle, you want to pull a little bit tighter on the working yarn when you work it. And end with a purl 2 because we rearranged our stitches. So now I can slide them up a little bit onto that needle, release my left needle, pull on the back cord until our needles are kind of aligned, slide the stitches back onto both needles. So we pull tight so that this gap in between your needles isn't super sloppy. Go ahead and turn your work. Bring the yarn in between your needles to the middle. Pull out the back needle. So because we rearranged our stitches, we can start with a knit 2 and end with a purl 2. So you're just going to repeat that until you reach about 3.5 inches or 9 centimeters in length when you are slightly stretching out your stitches. And we're going to do a special bind off that maintains a stretchy fabric, which is perfect for boot cuffs or anything in rib. We're going to do a bit of a setup. So for a setup, we're going to knit 2, and now we're going to knit these 2 together. So what we do is we take our needle, left-hand needle, and go into the front loops of both of these stitches like this. And now we're going to yarn over and pull that yarn over through these 2 stitches, and then slide that off your left-hand needle. We have decreased 1 stitch. Now we're going to purl 1. Bring your yarn around to the front. Now we're going to purl these 2 together. Take your left-hand needle and go into the back loops of these 2 stitches so that your right needle is on top of your left. Yarn over and pull a loop through both. Slide those 2 off. Purl 1 again. and then purl those two together. So bring the yarn around to the front, take your left needle into the 2 stitches on your right hand needle, into the back loops of them. So your right needle is on top of your left, yarn over, pull that yarn over through those 2 stitches, slide off. And that's it. That's pretty much our repeat. Step 1 and 2 are the same. Step 3 and 4 are the same. So steps 1 and 2, you're going to knit 1 and then knit those 2 stitches together through the back loop. Steps 3 and 4, you're going to purl 1 and then purl those 2 stitches on your right hand needle together. So the action that you do is always related to the stitch on your left hand needle. So my first stitch is a knit, so I'm going to knit it and then knit those 2 together through the back loop. My next stitch is a knit, so I'm going to knit it, knit those 2 together through the back loop. My next stitch is a purl, so I'm going to purl it and then purl those 2 together. My next stitch is a purl, so I'm going to purl it, purl those 2 together. And just keep doing that to the end of the needle. So now I have 1 stitch on my right hand needle. I can let go of my left hand needle, pull on this back cord, and then kind of turn my work so that the needle with all the stitches is closest to me, and you just keep going. And then cut a tail long enough to weave in later. I like to just kind of pull the yarn out. And now I'll show you how to kind of tidy up this edge. So place your bind off tail on a yarn needle, and our edge has a little bit of a gap here. You're going to go into the first bound off stitch. So if we look at our column here, this column of knit stitches start to curve. The first stitch that's really curved here, so just go into that first bound off stitch, pull through from front to back. Where our yarn is coming out of, this is our yarn here, coming out of this stitch. So I'm going to go back into that stitch from front to back. And there you have it. That is how to close the gap. We've just created kind of a mock knit stitch. So then you can go ahead and weave in your tails from there. The bind off is a little bit more flared than the cast on, but you're not going to notice that when you're wearing it because it's going to be all stretched out. I'm going to quickly show you how to weave in your ends. I'm going to start with the cast on tail, thread it onto a yarn needle. My yarn is coming out of this hole right here at the top, so I'm not going to put it back in that one, but just pick any other spot to go back through and thread it through to the back. Flip it inside out. Now I'm just going to weave it in this knit column all the way up. I'm just going to go into one of these V's. I'm going to go into the right leg of it. So I'm going to go into the second one from the bottom. This one right here. Pull through. And I'm just going to keep doing that. So just go into the right leg of the one above that. And I'm not pulling super tight. I want it to kind of blend in. So if you pull it really tight, it will scrunch the stitches a little bit. So I'm just being very gentle and only pulling the yarn hard enough to get it to settle. You can go up like an inch, inch and a half. And then I'm going to go underneath both legs of the next one. And then I'm going to go down just a couple stitches on the left leg. So how we were going into the right leg of the V, we're going to go into the left leg now. So kind of from right to left into the next V below. And then the one below that. Pull through. I like to kind of tug on it just a little bit so everything settles into place. And then I cut the yarn, leaving a very short tail. I'm okay leaving a small tail on this side because this is going to be the inside of our project and you're not going to see it. So we're essentially going to do the same thing with the other tail. Thread it through the yarn needle, and this is our bind off tail. We want this to be on the same side, so the wrong side of your project. So this is an upside down knit stitch, kind of 2 stitches above where my yarn is coming out of. And I'm going to go into the right leg, but I'm going to go from left to right this time. And then go into the leg directly above it from left to right. And you do this for about the same amount as the other side, so about an inch, inch and a half. I'm going to go up underneath both legs of the next upside down knit stitch from right to left. And then you can go down into the left leg of that knit stitch from left to right. Go underneath one more, below it from left to right. Stretch it out to make sure everything kind of lays as it should. Cut your tail. So here are our tails right here. It would be along this purl ridge right here, and it's fairly invisible. It doesn't have to be exact, but that is how I would weave in my ends. And now you're done. and you can enjoy your boot cuffs for the fall and winter. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this project, and if you did, please give the video a like and subscribe for lots more free patterns and free tutorials. And for all your knitting needs, come back to the Blue Mouse Knits.